T9C got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
Chris is shit sick.
T9C got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
Chris is shit sick.
Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of JT Sports Live. Wanted to come on here and give some reactions to all of the chaos that's been going on week 2 of this college football season, man. Notre Dame lost to some school called Northern Illinois in a very embarrassing performance. Colorado got humiliated by Nebraska on the road, 28-10. Nebraska exposed a lot of problems with Colorado's operation. Listen, as much as I want to see Deion Sanders succeed down there in Boulder, man, I'm going to just say it ain't looking pretty. And we got to be honest, we just can't be a fanboy to Deion Sanders and not call him out when he deserves to be criticized. Colorado in the first half of this game, they were looking like a JV high school team out there. We're going to discuss their performance and their loss to Nebraska more. Tennessee took care of business against NC State. They beat them 51-19. They could be the most dangerous team in the SEC this year. Got thoughts on South Carolina and Kentucky. With Michigan getting rolled at home by Texas, how bad could things get for the Wolverines this year? Shout out to everybody that's tuned in wherever you're watching. YouTube, X, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you have post notifications turned on so you don't miss when we go live. And this is our first ever call-in show. So once I get done giving off a few of my takes about today's action, I'll open up the phone lines for those of you guys who want to call in. Make sure that you check us out on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Follow us on Instagram at JT Sports _ and on X at JT Sports __. DM NFL, college football questions, topics that you would like to be discussed on a future episode. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out to my guy Dave. He says, JT, hope you're doing great, man. I'm doing pretty fine outside of watching Colorado get rocked in ugly fashion. Before we dive into it all, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Aura. In football, we all know that no quarterback can win without good protection up front. It's also important that you protect yourself from data brokers who sell your personal information online to scammers, spammers, and anybody else who may want to target you. That's why you should use Aura, today's sponsor of this episode. Aura shows which data brokers are passing away your information on the internet and automatically submits opt-out requests on your behalf. Go to aura.com/JTsports in description or pin comment down below to get a 14-day free trial and protect your personal information from being exposed online. Cleaning up your information online not only helps reduce the amount of spam you receive, but it also protects you from hackers who could use this info to help gain access into your social media accounts, bank accounts, or other sensitive information. Go to our sponsor, aura.com/JTsports in description or pin comment down below to gain access to your 14-day free trial and protect yourself from hackers looking to gain access into your sensitive information online. All right, everyone, let's get into it. Colorado got humiliated by Nebraska 28-10 in Lincoln. Listen, I'm rooting for Deion to succeed down there in Boulder, but the more Colorado football I watch, the more concerned I grow about Deion's operation down there, because in the first half against Nebraska tonight, Colorado looked like Bishop Sycamore. Y'all remember that fake high school football team that had these fake recruits that tried to make it seem like they were 3- and 4-star guys and they got blew out by IMG? That's how Colorado looked to start out this game against Nebraska. And at the end of the first half, they had negative 23 rushing yards. I've never seen a performance in all my years watching college football, right hand on the Bible, where I've seen the offense get negative yardage their first couple of possessions. I mean, after their first opening possession, when they went 3 and out, I knew things were about to get ugly. Then you got Shadur throwing an interception early, makes it 14-0. This was a nightmare game for Colorado supporters out there, because the biggest issues with this program got exposed by Nebraska. This is a poorly coached team. You can love Deion Sanders and root for him to succeed, but you gotta be honest about the coaching going on down there with that program. This was a poorly coached team in this game. The offensive line couldn't block anybody. I was watching it with a couple of my buddies, and they were saying, man, that offensive line can't even move. They getting pushed back, and the defensive line barely got any pass rush on Dylan Raiola. Meanwhile, Shadur Sanders got sacked 6 times in this game. And with how bad Colorado's offensive line was last season, you would have thought that Deion would have found the way to fix this problem with all the guys that he brought in through the transfer portal. But either his coaching is terrible because he doesn't know how to develop these offensive linemen, or either him and his staff have terrible player evaluation skills, because the guys they are bringing in aren't better than the dudes they had last year. And this team, in certain moments of this game, looked worse than what they did last year. They definitely don't look better. The wide receivers are good, but what's the point of having all these dynamic pass catchers if you can't give them opportunities to catch the football? You got Travis Hunter, who was going at Shedeur Sanders, knocking at him for not giving him the full ball. I mean, Travis, how is Shedeur supposed to get you the ball when he has no time to throw you the football? As soon as he drops back and sees you open, he's getting sacked. There are too many issues with this Colorado program to just ignore and say Nebraska is just a quality team. No, Colorado is supposed to be a quality team. Colorado destroyed Nebraska last year. You can't use the excuse of Nebraska being a good team to justify the bad coaching that we saw out of Deion Sanders and his coaching staff tonight. The defense played well in the second half, but the offense didn't help the defense out because they were inefficient. They couldn't sustain drives. They couldn't give Shedeur any time to make any big plays from within the pocket. Shedeur didn't have a good night. The whole team had a bad night. You can't just pin this loss on one person. This is a conservative effort, but the majority of the blame has to go to Deion Sanders for not having this team prepared. This team started out looking like a junior varsity high school squad. You got Dylan Raiola looking like Patrick Mahomes' twin. Not only does he have Mahomes' jersey number, but he also has a lot of mannerisms similar to Patrick Mahomes. The way he throws the football, the way that he threw that big touchdown when things broke down off platform across his body. When Dylan Raiola gets to his junior year, Nebraska is going to be very scary because by that point, they should more than have enough talent to not only compete for the Big Ten Conference, but to maybe be a national title contender. Dylan Raiola is a program-changing quarterback. You get a guy like him at quarterback, and he can resurrect your football program. Nebraska has been dead and irrelevant for over the last couple of years. But now that you have this Dylan Raiola kid, and he actually is good, has a lot of potential to be a transcendent talent, Nebraska football is on the rise. And regardless of how bad Colorado ends up being this season, this is an important win for Matt Rule in his second season because it shows growth. Last year, you lost to Colorado. They only won 4 games. This year, you beat them. You're winning games that you weren't able to win last year, and it's mostly due to you having a great defense, but dependable quarterback play. Dylan Raiola took care of the football. He outplayed Shedeur Sanders, which may sound crazy to hear, but he did. He looked better than Shedeur. He was the better of the 2 quarterbacks tonight. And Colorado, with the rest of their schedule going up against Colorado State next week, I don't even know if they're going to win more games than what they did last year with how bad their offensive line played. In the second half, they did turn things around a little bit. They got more going offensively than what they did in the first half, but it still was nothing to write home about. And just with how bad this team looked on the field tonight, I would be embarrassed if I was Deion Sanders. Because now more and more people that have supported this football team are now starting to realize, you know, you're not that good of a coach. You're kind of looking like a salesman. It's one thing to hype up and promote your program, but it's another thing when you're not able to back it up on the field. And all this loss did was further hurt the perception of Colorado football in the eyes of the media, the fans, and potential recruits. If I'm Juju Lewis, I wouldn't want to go play for you next year. I might as well just go to Indiana or stay committed to USC, because if this offensive line is as bad as what it is for Shedeur, why would I think that anything is going to be better if I was to come play for you? Jordan C, and I kind of felt bad for him because Deion was cussing all the offensive linemen out, including him in the fourth quarter. And I just kind of felt bad because if you're Jordan C and you're like, damn, man, like, this is what I chose to play for. This is what I chose to spend my next year playing college football for. An awfully close football team. And if I'm Jordan C and I'm kind of thinking about hitting the transfer portal after the season because I might have made a mistake. Maybe I do need to go to Maryland. And there are coaches that will open their arms for Jordan Seaton. because there is a lot of talent, there is a lot of upside. He's probably the best offensive lineman Colorado has, and that's saying something because he's a true freshman. And it's not like the guys that Deion brought in were bench players at their previous schools. You know, the majority of the starters on Colorado's O-line started at their previous programs for a good amount of games, and they were pretty decent. But it just shows that you can't just build a team from the portal, treat this like it's NFL free agency, and act like you're going to have an improved team if you don't have good coaching. When you have an offensive line, regardless of how much talent they have, they still got to have good communication. They got to know their assignments. That's why the majority of college football's best offensive lines are units where you have guys like Nebraska's tonight that played 100+ games together. Those are the units that got good chemistry. They know their assignments. They're able to communicate when pressures come in a certain way, or they know how to change up their schemes in the face of different defensive fronts. Colorado doesn't have the ability to do that. And they're showing film of other teams. That just shows you just how badly coached they are. Why can't you watch your own film and help your players grow by assessing your performance? Why do you got to get motivated and inspired off North Dakota State hustling to the ball every play? This was a very bad and eye-opening performance that we saw out of Colorado tonight in their loss 28-10 to Nebraska, because it gives you a lot of skepticism about Deion Sanders, if this dude is even qualified to be a head coach. And that's not hating. That's just asking an honest question. Is Deion Sanders really qualified to be a head coach? Because it doesn't look like it. It looks like he's a big name in a big pond. It looks like he's biting off more than he can chew as the head coach of Colorado football. This dude doesn't even know how to utilize his timeouts. He doesn't know how to manage the clock. There was a situation before halftime, Colorado's trying to get in the field goal range, and he's just wasting time. The clock's going from 20 to 19 to 16, and then he waits to 11 seconds left on the clock to call a timeout. What are you doing? It doesn't take a genius to have good clock management. When I criticize certain coaches when it comes to clock management, I feel it's a fair criticism. It's not one of those things, oh, you're not in the code, you're not a coach, you're not in that situation, you wouldn't know how to call a timeout. Neither, when you can learn basic time management from just playing Madden or college football 25. It will always confuse me how head coaches struggle to manage the clock, when I really believe that time management is one of the most simplistic concepts that you can master as a head coach. If you don't have that on point, then everything else is probably not that good neither, if you just don't know how to properly assess in-game situations. You know, he's snapping on the offensive line because they can't even get a push to get a 4th and 1 conversion when the coaching gets the issue. If Deion doesn't look qualified, what makes you think that anybody else on the staff is qualified? Pat Shurmur, their offensive coordinator, is a downgrade from the dude they had calling the plays last year, Sean Lewis. He's the head coach of San Diego State right now. Pat Shurmur has been fired several times as a head coach and several times as an OC. He's never been a good play caller, and there was no reason to believe that Colorado's offense was going to be that better with him taking over play calling duties from Sean Lewis. This team looks exactly like what they did last year. You can't block anybody. If anything, you may look worse. Your offensive line just got pushed back every play in the first quarter. I've never seen a team have negative 20-something rushing yards in the first quarter. They had negative 23 yards in the first quarter. They didn't even get a lick of offense. They got pushed back every play. It was insanity to me. Insanity. I've never seen a team just go backwards. At this level, you would have thought that Colorado was North Dakota State and Nebraska was Alabama. And Nebraska is going to be a good team. But tonight they looked like they were damn Georgia or something. And they could have ran up the score, but I believe after halftime, they took some of their foot off the pedal. And they kind of eased up a little bit. And that's what allowed Colorado to get back in this game. But this was an awful display of coaching that we saw. I know I'm going to lose some subscribers, but I don't even care anymore. I cannot just hold water for a guy that consistently puts out a poor product every single week. You can love Deion Sanders, but you got to give criticism when it's deserved, and he deserves a lot of it tonight. Regardless of how good of a team Nebraska is, Colorado has too much talent to just perform this poorly than what they did tonight. Some of the issues isn't because that offensive line is bad. Even though Deion handpicked these players, some of these issues comes down to coaching, guys not knowing their assignments, guys missing blocks. You know, I'm kind of starting to look at Deion in a different light after watching this performance against Nebraska, because this team looked unprepared. You don't have a lot of depth. You went down with Shiloh getting injured. You lost a defensive lineman. Travis Hunter got banged up. I already know Shedeur Sanders is banged up because he was running for his life back there. At this point, is it a fair question to ask if Shedeur and Travis Hunter should just sit out for the rest of the season, prepare for the combine so they can protect their draft stock? Because they're going to get injured. Travis Hunter doesn't even want to get taken out of the game, especially when you're getting embarrassed like this. Travis Hunter is a true competitor. I can't get mad at him when he's complaining about wanting to get the football because he wants to make a play. He knows that this team ain't that good, and him, Shedeur, and only a select few group of people can do something about it. But this college football season has been really weird. So I'm not going to write Nebraska. Well, I'm not going to write Colorado off yet, because with the way that Arizona has been struggling and the rest of these other Big 12 teams have been struggling, there's no telling who Colorado could be. You know, because a lot of these other Big 12 schools don't really look that hot themselves. You know, so maybe Colorado can still get the 6-7 wins. We got to see this season progress some more. Nebraska is good enough to be an 8-9 win team. They should start 7-0 before they have their big matchup against Ohio State. But Colorado definitely looked pedestrian in this game. They made Nebraska look like a better team than what they actually are. Nebraska's a good team, but tonight you would have thought they were Georgia or prime Clemson. Really disgusting performance that we witnessed out of this Colorado team coached by Coach Prime. And they got to fix some things quick, because this season could get a lot worse than what it did last year. And it's really surprising, because you would have thought with them playing in the Big 12, a conference that's not as good as what the Pac-12 was last year, you know, you would have thought that the performance would have been better. I don't even know if they can beat Colorado State or if they can even beat Baylor, for crying out loud. Tennessee dominated NC State. 51-19 was the final score. The Tennessee Volunteers are the scariest team in the SEC. Not only could they be a playoff contender, but they are good enough to win the SEC title this year. They have everything that it takes to compete with the best teams in this conference this year. You got elite trench play. Your defensive line is really impressive. James Pierce is projected to be a top 5 pick in next year's draft. You got a really good offensive line. You got Nico Imaviava, who is starting to become a star in college football. He potentially could be a finalist for the Heisman in NYC at the end of this year. His performance against NC State tonight was really impressive. He had 3 total touchdowns, 2 through the air, 1 on the ground. He also did have a couple of crucial mistakes. He had an interception. 1 got taken back for a pick 6 off a tip. But that's to be expected when you got a young quarterback who still is growing. And for him to play the way he did tonight, even with the mistakes against a really well-coached NC State defense, is impressive. And nobody in the SEC has an easy schedule. Tennessee has some hard road games coming up. But in terms of their chances of being able to win the SEC title this year, on a scale of 9 through 10, I got to go on a 9 confidence level right now. because your offensive line, defensive line are performing at elite level. You got a deep and talented group of wide receivers. And as long as Nico Iamaleava continues to improve and grow into a star week after week, he could become the best quarterback in this conference and be a program changer for Tennessee and get this program the heights that they haven't seen since Peyton Manning. Eventually, they could be a possible national championship contender somewhere down the road. Hell, they may be a national championship contender this year. Against NC State tonight, they showed that they aren't just a pass-heavy team. When you think of Tennessee, you think of a finesse football team due to their head coach, who runs a air raid style offense. And Josh Heupel, although he runs a offense that's considered to be gimmicky, when you got a high-level quarterback like Nico, who is really good when it comes to throwing with anticipation and accuracy, and he's an incredible athlete, it takes this offense to a different level. This Nico Iamaleava kid, he could potentially be a first-round pick 2 years from now. That's how good he is, and that's how much potential he has. He looks like Trevor Lawrence, but 100 times the athletic ability and a little bit more arm strength. Tennessee is a physical football team. They are not a finesse team just because they like to throw the football around. They had 249 rushing yards. They were averaging 5.7 yards per carry against a really good and well-coached NC State defense. And on the defensive side of things for the Vols, they had 3 sacks. Grayson McCall, he got blitzed nearly every play, and he didn't look good tonight. Tennessee got a good win against a really quality opponent. This isn't one of those games where Tennessee's beating up on a low-level ACC team. NC State, with how bad the ACC has looked right now, they could probably be in the ACC championship, or they could finish as a top 4, top 3 team in this conference. But Tennessee, the more I watch them, the more confident I grow with my belief that maybe they could beat Georgia, or they could beat Alabama or Texas for the SEC title this year. This is a really impressive football team. Another game I want to talk about, South Carolina 31, Kentucky 6. South Carolina's defensive line is one of the best in college football, man, because they were so dominant against this Wildcats offensive line. Brock Vandagriff literally had no time to throw. If you thought Colorado's offensive line looked bad against Nebraska, you might want to watch Kentucky's offensive line against South Carolina's defensive line, because either they need to redo their whole entire starting offensive lineup, or they just went up against the best D-line in college football. South Carolina has this one true freshman that was a 5-star recruit out of last year's recruiting cycle, and this dude looks like Jadeveon Clowney reincarnated. Although he is really raw, he isn't really the most technically sound. Just with the amount of athleticism he possesses, I would be surprised if South Carolina is able to keep this guy around. And I don't know his name, but everybody keeps talking about him on Twitter and X and Instagram. This dude is a machine. They're 5-4 deep at defensive tackle, and they just completely obliterated Kentucky every single play. They decided to drop back and throw the football. Brock Vandagriff was 3 of 10. 30 passing yards, 1 interception. He had no time to throw. When he was dropping back, he was seeing an absolute avalanche out there. Offensively, for the Gamecocks, things still look really rough. Lenore Sellers is still very unpolished. He's not a good passer, but he was good enough to get the win for you in this game because the defense mostly carried the load. They got some big takeaways, which gave you good field positioning, and Lenore Sellers was able to break out the sacks, and he was able to make some big plays downfield. He does have a really good arm, but when it comes to his mental processing of the game, I think that still is a work in progress. But he played better today than what he did last week against Old Dominion. 11 of 15, 159 passing yards, 2 touchdowns in the pick. He didn't have a lot of success on the ground. I expect that to change. But, some of that may be due to how bad South Carolina's offensive line is. But when Kentucky's defense is on the field for as much as what they were during this game due to how bad the offense was, eventually your defense is going to get ran down. You're going to get worn out and tired, and you're going to start giving up big plays. And that's what happened to Kentucky's defensive unit. And if you're a Wildcats fan, those of y'all who exist out there, the optimism that I had about this team going into this season is slowly starting to evaporate. I'm not about to write off Kentucky after one bad game, but if your offensive line is getting blitzed and obliterated like this, how are you going to be able to fare against Georgia or any of the other better defensive fronts in this conference? The positive for Kentucky is that you outgained South Carolina on the ground, 139 rushing yards to 86. I don't know how that was possible. Apparently, your O-line knows how to run block, but they don't know how to pass protect. But South Carolina, you got a big win. You were, at one point, a 9.5-point, 10-point underdog going into this game. The line moved down to you being like an 8-point underdog, and this game was sloppy at first for both teams, but eventually South Carolina's defense, their defensive line just was the difference, and they're 2-0. Kentucky falls to 1-1 on the year. Notre Dame lost to the most, let me rephrase that. Notre Dame had the most random loss, and I don't even know how I want to start this off, man. Notre Dame had the most random loss that you'll ever seen. They lost to a school called Northern Illinois University. 16-14 was the final score. And listen, I get that Marcus Freeman is doing some good things with recruiting. He's had some big-time wins at Notre Dame in his short tenure being a head coach there. But is it crazy to say that Notre Dame should fire Marcus Freeman after they just lost to a MAC team? This was embarrassing. There's no way you can justify this loss. And there's no way Notre Dame can recover from this loss and become a playoff team. If you're losing to Northern Illinois with how lackluster your offense looked, you're not going to be able to beat USC. You may not even be able to beat Georgia Tech or even Florida State. Your offensive line is not as good as what it's been in past years. Your quarterback, Riley Leonard, he's not good. He looks like a poor man's Daniel Jones. He has good size. He's a good athlete, but he can't hit an open wide receiver to save his life. He doesn't have good decision-making. And him not having dynamic pass catchers doesn't do him no favors neither. Notre Dame's receivers struggle to create separation. They don't have any speed at all. Their running backs are pretty good, but they're not explosive backs. They're more of a bruiser. Notre Dame has running backs that they wear you out throughout the course of a game. They're not going to have a lot of 40, 50-yard runs for touchdowns, but they're going to have a lot of 6, 8-yard gains consistently with their styles. They're bruising backs. They just want to run you over. They want to stiff arm you. They want to truck you like it's Madden 25, like their prime beast mode, Marshawn Lynch. Those are the kind of running backs that Notre Dame has. Their offense isn't dynamic because they don't have anybody with game-changing speed, and they don't have the ability to generate big plays in the passing game. And eventually, Notre Dame's going to end up losing the game that they're going to be favored in. Like, let's say they play Louisville again. You could lose to Louisville. Louisville's offense is better than what yours is. And with the amount of money that they're paying their offensive coordinator, you got to pick up the production. Their offensive coordinator is one of the highest paid in college football. And with how bad this offense looks, the defense is probably going to have to carry Notre Dame throughout this season. There's not a single game on Notre Dame's schedule anymore that you can look at and say, oh, yeah, that's a guaranteed win. Because when you're solely dependent on defense to win and your offense is this bad, you don't have the ability to even get the 20 points every game. It's a question if you're even going to get to the 20s. Every game's going to be a dogfight. And you're going to find yourself in games like you were today against NIU, where they're closer than what they should be because your quarterback play isn't good, you're not dynamic on offense, and when you overly rely on your defense to win, you die about that. And eventually, NIU, they pieced together a really good drive in the end. They got in the field goal range. They got some clutch fourth down conversions. I mean, they wanted it. You can't take anything away from NIU's win. You can call Notre Dame all you want to, or you can call Notre Dame overrated all you want to, but NIU showed up. And they were a 28-point underdog. They were prepared. Despite how many turnovers they had, they never felt like they were out of the game. There were times during this game where you thought the momentum was going to shift Notre Dame's way. But when you allow a team like Northern Illinois from the MAC to hang around with you and your offense sucks, yeah, you're going to end up losing games like this. And this is a worse loss than what happened against Marshall not too long ago. Marcus Freeman is a good guy. I think he's a decent head coach, but I don't know if he's ever going to be the right head coach to get Notre Dame to a national title. And that win against Texas A&M, maybe Texas A&M is just that bad, or maybe you kind of got a little bit lucky. Maybe you had some luck go your way in that game, but Notre Dame's offense sucks. Your defense is good, but even then, you could have had some stops on defense that could have gave you the win in this game, and you couldn't get it done. There's no way I'm going to see Notre Dame as a playoff contender for the foreseeable future until they can win games that they are expected to win. Why does Notre Dame play good in big games against the better teams on their schedule, but they underplay to competition? They constantly play down to these inferior opponents. You paid NIU over $1 million to come into your trap and take over your trap and walk out $1 million richer and with the bragging rights of beating a top 5 team. They were 0-10 against top 10 opponents before they beat you, man. There's no coming back from this if you're Marcus Freeman. This is a loss that is going to define Marcus Freeman as a head coach until he truly can get Notre Dame to the playoffs and he can get them over the hump, because this was inexcusable. For a program like Notre Dame that has the prestige and the tradition that they have, they kind of lost a little bit of respect out of me with how they played against NIU. For as much as a blue blood as what Notre Dame is, games like this is why people constantly call you overrated. This is why people feel we shouldn't release any rankings until the 4th or 5th week into this year. Because Notre Dame every year is always rated as a top 10 team when they really are a top 15 or top 20 team at best most occasions when they got a good schedule. You beat Texas A&M, but you lost to Northern Illinois the week after. Did you overlook Northern Illinois? Shout out to Northern Illinois University. I don't know where that's located. All I know is that I've played with them a few times and wrote the glory on College Football 25. They got some nice uniforms. I remember their quarterback last year, Rocky Lombardi, I believe was his name. Yeah, I used to like watching him. I thought he was related to Vince Lombardi. But, shout out to their head coach. After a win like this, I wonder if he's going to get some head coaching opportunities. Is he going to have the opportunity to move up to a higher program with more prestige, more recognition? Because if you can go on the road and you can get a big-time win against a school like Notre Dame, regardless of how overrated they may be, that's impressive. And he's done a pretty good job of building up this NIU program. But I don't think Notre Dame is going to be a playoff team this year. I would be extremely surprised if they end up winning 9 games this year. This looks like a 7-5, 8-4 team with them being so dependent on running the football in their defense. With Michigan getting avalanched by Texas at home, how bad are things going to be for Michigan this year? Because this loss to Texas exposed the truth about what Michigan is as a football program right now, and they're in rebuild mode. You lost Jim Harbaugh, the greatest head coach this program has had since the 90s and 80s. J.J. McCarthy has been the best quarterback they've had in a while as well. And you lost tons of talent from that championship team last year. Now with you having a lot of new faces on the offensive line, you don't have a lot of talent in the passing game. The only reliable weapon you have is Colson Loveland, who's probably the best tight end in college football. And that's about it. That's not going to be enough for Michigan to get the 9 wins this year. Your offensive line is struggling. Davis Warren isn't it. He's a great story, but he's not a good quarterback. He had 2 costly interceptions. He has limited mobility. And Alex Orji, he's the better athlete, but you're scared to ask Alex Orji to even drop back to throw one football pass. You know, you can't get the run game going. Your defense is still good, but when you're just completely inept and incompetent offensively, it's hard for your defense to carry you to wins when you're going up against elite teams like Texas. And if you can't even compete and be in a one-possession game with a school like Texas, you're going to have a hard time being able to beat USC, who has a good defense, it looks like, with their new defensive coordinator, Deanne Lynn, and we already know how good they're going to be offensively. Are you going to be able to beat Washington on the road? Are you even going to be able to beat Illinois, Michigan State? You know you're going to get steamrolled by Oregon, and you're probably going to get embarrassed by Ohio State. Ohio State was probably laughing when they saw the final score in this Texas-Michigan game, because they know that the Michigan team that they're about to play this year is inferior to them talent-wise, from a physicality standpoint, and from a coaching standpoint right now. They don't look good enough to even give Ohio State a challenge. Now, that is a rivalry game. Rivalry games, you can never judge them based off what's happened throughout the season, because rivalry games can get a little bit weird. Michigan could be a big underdog against Ohio State this year and end up extending their win streak over them. That's just how weird rivalry games are. But Michigan right now has some serious problems that got exposed by Texas. They need to step up their recruiting when it comes to getting elite wide receivers. Your offensive line is going to end up improving, but it's hard to have an offensive line that is consistently among the top 5 best in college football like you have the past 3 years. And you lost Jim Harbaugh. Some of us were thinking that Sharon Moore could be the David Shaw for Michigan, you know, but he's not. When Jim Harbaugh left Stanford, David Shaw took over. He was on his staff as an assistant coach, and Stanford was still a really good program. He picked up from where Jim Harbaugh left off, but Sharon Moore, it seems like he's the complete opposite. He may be one of the few Jim Harbaugh assistants that may not be that good of a head coach. And right now it looks like for Michigan, they were on top the last couple of years, and they're crashing right back down to reality. They're coming back down to earth. I can't see them winning the Big Ten or being a playoff team, because when you just get avalanche at home against Texas, you're going to have a hard time beating the other elite teams on your schedule. And I see you having automatic losses to USC and Ohio State. Even if you are at home, you're going to have a difficult time beating them just because you got no offense. You got no quarterback that can help you play complementary football. Oregon is the loss too. So you're probably going to end up going 7-5, 8-4 at best. And I could see a situation where Michigan may not even have a winning record this season. As ludicrous as what that may sound, there's no guaranteed wins that you have when your offense is this bad as what it was today against Texas. And the Big Ten has a lot of quality depth this year. You know, it's not just 3-4 teams running the conference anymore. It's actually some legit competition. And if Michigan doesn't pick it up offensively, they're going to have a really bad season coming off a national title win. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in on X, YouTube. Hit that like button, retweet the stream. Before I get up on out of here, I'm going to open up the phone line so you guys can go ahead and call in. So for those of you guys who want to call in, I'm going to end up having the phone number on the screen so you guys can call in, give out your takes. Eager to hear what you guys got to say about this game. Let's see. All right, so the phone lines are open. I'm going to post the number in the chat so you guys can just go ahead, call in. And if we don't get no phone calls in the next couple of minutes, then we're just going to end up packing it up for the night. So I just posted the number in the chat. You guys can call in 904-834-5927. Give out your takes. How you feeling about today? How you feeling about Michigan's blowout loss? How we feeling about Tennessee's win over NC State? And, you know, how ugly does it look down there in Boulder, Colorado? All right, man. So y'all can call in. We got the number down, bottom on the screen, 904-834-5927. It's the number to call in if you want to call in, give your take about what's going on tonight in week 2 of college football. If you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. If you got any questions that you would like answered on the future episode, you can send them in the DMs on Instagram at JTSports_ and on X at JTSports__. Make sure that you give us a 5-star review. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon. All you got to do is type in JT Sports and it will pop up. Share the podcast with your friends, family members if you enjoy as well. So we're going to stay live for a couple more minutes, see if anybody wants to call in, see if anybody has any takes they want to get up off their chest. Right now, Oregon is currently tied 27-27 with Boise State. Ashton Gentry just scored. Phone number 904-834-5927 for anybody that wants to call in. Give your take about what happened tonight. I'm also posting a number on X as well. So the number for everybody that's on X, 904-834-5927. It's the number to call in. Give your take about what's been going on. This college football has been madness so far, man. I mean, you had LSU who was in a close game with Nicholls State. You had Oklahoma who was struggling to beat a Houston team that got rolled by UNLV last week. And I mean, Oregon right now, there's a good chance they may not even be able to beat Boise State with how they're playing right now, how they're looking. So we're going to stay live for about 2 more minutes to see if anybody wants to call in, give out their takes. The number is pinned in the comment section. X, Twitter, 904-834-5927 is the number to call in to the show. Oh, man, Oregon just fumbled too. Boise State just got the ball. Boise State about to pull off an upset. Oregon might be the second top 10 team that we see fall. We're going to have Notre Dame and Oregon too. Man. Dang, man. Nobody want to call in. Nobody want to give their takes. What's going on, man? Numbers on the screen. Call in show 904-834-5927. Nobody want to call in. Nobody got nothing to say. Everybody quiet. No Nebraska fans out there that want to rave about their win. No Colorado fans that want to vent. Nobody wants to call and tell me I was wrong. Wow, nobody's calling in. Well, I guess we got to try again next week, or we'll try again tomorrow. So this is it for this episode of JT Sports Live. I appreciate everybody for tapping in. We're going to be live tomorrow after the Sunday night game between the Rams and the Detroit Lions, reacting to all of the week 1 madness from Sunday's from Sunday's slate of games. So if you enjoy the NFL, make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and make sure that you got on notifications so you don't miss when we go live tomorrow. We're going to stay live for maybe 30 more seconds. Anybody that wants to call in, give their take to today's action. The number is 904-834-5927. Once again, the number is 904-834-5927 for anybody that wants to call in and give their take to what's transpired today in college football. Hit the like button, subscribe, share if you enjoyed, and yeah, man, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I guess nobody wants to call in, so I'm gonna just end the live stream at here or at this spot. But I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I'll see you guys tomorrow night with another episode.